I remember when I got to my crush's place, out of nowhere, she kept telling me, oh, Bubba, I have something really cool in the garage. Do you want to go see it? Yeah, sure. Let's go check it out. And right as I go into the garage, out of nowhere, I realized that she ended up closing the door behind me and locking it. And at that moment, I realized I'm trapped in this girl's garage. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but crazy story. Now, the story all starts off back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 12 year. Now, in grade 12, as you guys may know, I was a major player. But not only that, since it was my grade 12 year, I always panicked about what I was gonna do in the future. And I guess the only way I ended up relieving the stress of not knowing was basically doing the Devil's Tango. But I remember there was one time specifically in my grade 12 year where there was a girl in my school that I actually really liked. For some reason, it was something about her that made her feel like the world was normal, and every time me and her would interact with each other and hang out with each other, I could always see like a proper future with her, which is honestly something I really needed back when I was in grade 12 because I would always panic about my future. But for some reason, when I pictured her in my future, it seemed right. So I remember one day in my grade 12 year, it was right after class, and me and her, we ended up walking away from each other, and that's when my buddy walked up to me. He walked up to me and said, Bubba, bro, why don't you just like ask her out? Like, why are you making it so awkward for yourself? Just go and like say a couple things to her, man. Oh, I don't know. I think we're better as friends, maybe. Bubba, you know that's BS. You're never just friends with girls, bro. Just like go talk to her and like ask her out. Just do it, man. So knowing that he was right, there was no way I was not gonna ask this girl out, and knowing that it was my final year with her in high school, I might as well just go up to her and ask her out. So I remember the next day when me and her, we entered the class at the same time. I remember I looked at her and she looked at me, and that's when I said, so I was wondering, are you free anytime soon? Yeah. Why? What's wrong, Bubba? Oh, well, like I was wondering, and right as I was about to ask her out, the teacher ended up interrupting saying, Bubba, you can take a seat now. And I didn't get to ask her out. It really sucked how the teacher ended up stopping me midway through, but at the same time, I guess she really didn't care. Because once again, to adults, high school relationships never really are a good thing. And as an adult right now, I can easily say high school relationships aren't a thing. But going on from there, I remember the whole time during class, she kept looking at me and I kept looking at her. And I guess she was trying to figure out what I was trying to ask her. But I guess she kind of also took the hint that I was trying to ask her out. So I remember she ended up passing me a note, which I know is super cringy and something you only see in like the basic high school shows back when like we were kids. But I'm gonna be honest, she ended up passing me a note, and when I received this note, I ended up reading it, and it said, were you trying to ask me out? Question mark. And at that moment, I ended up writing down yes, and I passed it back to her because at this point, I really did not care. Like, I just wanted a straight up answer. Like, the worst she can say is no. But what this girl ended up doing was something a lot worse than saying no, because she ended up sending the note back and saying yes, and to meet her up after school at the front of the school. I was like, sure, okay, bet. And at that moment, I had a smile on my face. I was really excited. I was hyped up. And obviously, you guys probably right now are happy that I ended up getting a date. But let's just say things got a lot worse than I expected. Because right as class ended and I ended up, walking down the hallway with excitement that I ended up actually finally asking out this girl that I had a crush on, my buddy walks up to me. He walks up to me and says, bro, Bubba, did you end up asking out that girl? Huh? Oh, yeah, I did actually. And to be honest, we're going on a date today after school. Dude, that's awesome, man. What are you gonna do with her? I'm not sure, to be honest. Okay, well, she's right now walking right there, so you might as well go ask her what's the plan. So at that moment, I remember I ended up walking away from my friend and I walked up to her. When I walked up to her, she ended up looking at me when she turned around and smiled, and she said, oh, hey, so what do you want to do after school? I'm not really sure, to be honest. I didn't really think I would get this far, is what I told her. And then she ends up telling me, oh, well, that's fine. I mean, it's a Friday, so I think I have a pretty good idea for us what to do. Okay, yeah, cool. I'm down. And then she walks away. And what this girl's plan was the most insane thing ever, because I remember after school came around and I got inside my car and pulled it up in front of the school. When I did, she ended up entering the passenger seat, and me and her, we started to drive out of there. And as we were driving, I remember she looked at me and said, so are you hungry? I mean, I'm always hungry. Yeah. What do you want to eat? Oh, well, like we can go eat like, I don't know, some takeout if you're down, and take it back to my place. I have a really cool hangout spot. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. That's not an issue. Let's go get takeout. So me and this girl, we ended up going to McDonald's, which I know is not the best place for a first date, but to be fair, we were high school kids. We didn't know any better. And we ended up getting takeout. We went through the drive-thru and we drove straight to her place. And when we finally got to her driveway, I remember she ended up taking out something out of her purse, and she ended up opening the garage door. Now, this garage door that she was opening was made of steel. Like, it was like a special sort of steel that you cannot break through. It was like some sort of like crazy stuff, which to be fair, her house was like really expensive. She lived in one of those like super rich houses that only millionaires would live in. And I remember when she opened the garage, she ended up saying, oh, like, you see there's a couch in there? Yeah, just park your car like right beside the couch in the garage and we could just chill in there with your car. You want me to park my car in your garage? Aren't your parents gonna be home anytime soon? What? Oh, no, they're gone for the weekend. Don't worry. Okay. So I ended up driving my car into her garage and I ended up parking in the spot where she told me to. And right when I came out of the car with her, we ended up sitting on the couch that was at the garage and we turned on the TV and just started watching a movie. Obviously, me and her were like talking a bit here and there, but something was very odd about this garage when we ended up going in there because it was really nice, but at the same time, it felt like a steel box. Like if it wasn't for the couch and my car and the TV, nothing else was in there. And if you like took all three of those things out of that room, I'm not gonna lie to you, it would seem like a room that you would see in a mental asylum. And honestly, it kind of freaked me out. But I tried not to make it a big deal and I just kept, you know, basically interacting with this girl. And well, me and her, we got really close to the point where midway through the movie, we ended up making out. And well, I think you guys know where I was going with this, but we ended up doing the Devil's Tango right on the couch. Obviously, I was really happy about it, but what happened next honestly freaked me out because I remember midway through us doing the Devil's Tango, she ended up like grabbing my car keys out of my pocket and then she ended up like standing up saying, Baba, I want to do something crazy. Can you follow me for a second? I ended up saying sure, and I ended up going to this like corner of the garage and I saw there was like some sort of like handcuff that was like connected to the wall of the garage. When I saw this, I was like, yo, this is kind of weird. But then she ended up pushing me up against the wall and then she made out with me. But right as she was making out with me, she ended up putting the handcuff on me. And at that moment, I realized what she was doing because she ended up walking backwards and said, Baba, I always had like an idea of like me and you being together forever. And like, I don't want you to panic because I know in like the next 365 days of you being in here, you'll fall in love with me. At that moment, I was like, what? This girl has been watching way too many romance movies, that's for sure. But I started to panic. I kept thinking she was joking as well. So I kept saying things like, okay, like this is not funny anymore. Like unhandcuff me. Like there's no reason to do this. But this girl wasn't having it. She ended up going sitting back at the couch with my car keys. And then she ended up locking my door for my car and ended up leaving the garage. And I ended up getting stuck in the garage where there was nothing near me. There was nothing I could do to help me out. So I started to panic. Now, if you guys are probably wondering, oh, Baba, why don't you just get your phone out? Well, I didn't have my phone on me. My phone was actually left in the car. So I guess she kind of knew what she was doing when she decided to take my car keys. Going on from there, though, I remember I was really upset and I was actually there for like 4 hours. She didn't come into the garage. She didn't check in on me. And I was surprised because when you have someone imprisoned, like you got to have someone watching over, right? So I remember I kept like looking around the room and that's when I realized in the corner of the room, there was a security camera watching me. I kept waving at the security camera in panic, thinking that maybe her parents might figure out that I'm stuck in there. But no, she ended up seeing me waving through the security camera, walked into the room and said, Baba, are you okay? Like, why do you keep waving at the camera? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? You locked me in your own garage. Like, what do you think? I'm trapped in here. Baba, like I said, just it'll take some time, but you'll prefer to be in here. Trust me. Are you nuts? Is what I told her. And I started to freak out. The only thing I was really close to somewhat was my vehicle, but I didn't have the keys. Anyways, another 4 hours went by and officially I was in there for 8 hours straight. I was really upset. I was super annoyed. And honestly, I was actually really hardcore panicking to the point where I remember as I was panicking though, luckily the girl ended up walking back into the room, the crush that I guess always wanted, but now really did not want. And she ended up handing me a plate of food. The food she gave me, by the way, was a bowl of mac and cheese. And I love mac and cheese, but not in a garage that was freezing cold. Like I was super upset. But I remember I started eating the food and I kept asking her, do you really think like this is gonna work? Like you locking me in here? Like, you know, someone's eventually gonna have to come here and get me, right? Oh, Baba, you don't understand. No one comes into the garage. This is my hangout spot. And then she just ended up walking out of the room. At that moment, I kept thinking of ways for me to get out of that place. And that's when I realized the bowl that she gave me for mac and cheese was like this heavy metal steel bowl. And the only thing that was somewhat close to me was my own car. So I guess you guys know where I was going with this, but I ended up getting that bowl. I threw it as hard as I could at the car. And that's when the car alarm went off. I remember a car started going off, going beep, 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 and started like panicking. And me worried that the girl was just gonna come back into the garage and just turn it off with my car key. Surprisingly, she didn't. So this car alarms just kept going off for like a good like 30 minutes. And finally, I ended up hearing cop sirens come down and park in front of the garage. And then that's when I ended up hearing some voices go on saying, ma'am, there's a vehicle in there that keeps going off. Can we please check it in there? Oh, it's nothing. You don't need to go in there. There's literally nothing going on in there. It's just my car what just kept going off. It's fine. And obviously for some reason the cops weren't taking it. So they ended up opening the garage door. And once they opened it, they saw me handcuffed to the corner and they knew instantly what was going on. She ended up getting arrested and I ended up going home that day, but the cop ended up telling me, sometimes there's some women you don't want to go near, and this was one of them. I remember when I finally went to my crush's place, I was super excited, but then out of nowhere, my crush ends up telling me, oh, my room's downstairs in the basement. Do you want to like go down there? Yeah, sure. Wait, why is your room in the basement? Oh, because I get more like privacy. Like, here, just follow me. And at that moment, when we went down the steps of the basement, out of nowhere, I ended up smelling this awful smell. And then when I looked at her room, I instantly regretted going to my crush's place in the first place. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane, but I gotta say crazy story. So today's story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 9 year. Now in grade 9, there was a girl that was in my biology class that I had a major crush on. Like, I cannot explain how much of a crush I had on this girl, but she was known as Miss Perfect. From having blonde hair, blue eyes, and on top of that, she looked amazing like 24/7. I remember back when I was in high school, I thought this girl would be the girl of my dreams. But I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was a real helpless romantic back when I was in grade 9. And I remember throughout the school year, every time I entered biology class, I always ended up staring at her or just being some sort of weirdo. And 100%, there was no way I thought she would be interested in me. Until one day, I remember in my biology class, we ended up getting an assignment to make an atom. If you guys don't know what an atom is, well, figure it out on a different channel because I'm not here to teach you science. But basically, one thing led to another. I remember our teacher walked up to the board and she basically started writing names down of students in the class. She ended up pairing us on her own because she always knew that we ended up choosing our own friends and never get the work done. So she thought it would be smart to basically pair us up in different groups. I remember as I was watching the board and writing everyone's name, I ended up seeing her write my crush's name and my name was right beside her. And at that moment, I started to freak out. In my mind, I was thinking, no way. Like, she actually wrote my name. Wait, I'm paired up with my crush. No way, dude. And I started to freak out and basically get super excited. And when my crush saw my name on the board beside hers, she ended up just looking at me. And I think that was the first time she actually stared at me without thinking I was some sort of weirdo. I know it sounds really sad, but just keep listening because the story gets more insane. Because I remember after the teacher ended up writing all the names on the board, she ends up basically walking up in front of us and says, okay, class, so this is your partners for the atom project. I want everyone to basically get together and start planning. At that moment, I ended up walking up to her desk and I said, hi. So we're doing the project, right? Yeah, we got paired up for it, obviously. At that moment, I was super nervous. And by the way, back when I was in grade 9, I had a massive stutter, like to the point where it was really, really bad. So every time I tried to communicate with her, I tried to think what I was going to say before I actually said it. But honestly, it never ended up going out well because every time I looked at her, I would just get super nervous and honestly just butterflies in my stomach. I remember over time though, me and her, we ended up finally planning out what we wanted to do. But since we ran out of time in that class from me being so dumb and nervous, she ends up telling me, oh, Bubba, do you want to just like come over to my place and like just get the project done quick? Wait, what? Yeah, like you can just come over. You want me to come over to your place? Yeah, you never been to a girl's house before? At that moment, I kind of stood there frozen and I kind of got excited and I said, yeah, I'll be there. I remember when I walked out of the classroom that day, I was so in shock about being invited over that I ended up basically going up to my friends in the cafeteria at lunch and basically told them the news. They all ended up looking at me in disbelief and they're like, bro, there's no way you're going out with one of the hottest girls in school, bro. Like, are you serious? Yeah, dude, like, I don't know how it happened. It just happened, I guess. Like, it's fate. Okay, Bubba, it's not fate. The teacher just assigned you guys both. Relax, dude. Just go to her place and, you know, see what you can do. I remember as the school day went on, as the final class of the school day ended up happening, I ended up going to the bathroom and I ended up staring at myself in the mirror, trying to give myself a motivational speech to basically, you know, make sure I had the confidence to actually go to this girl's place. And as I'm looking at myself in the mirror, basically telling myself that I am the tiger, I am the animal, I am the master. Out of nowhere, a student walks in and says, dude, are you good, bro? Like, what's wrong with you? Nothing. I'm gonna go. Crazy enough, he was a senior in high school that played for the rugby team, and there are more stories about him later in the future, but we'll talk about him in another video. Going on though, I remember when the bell finally rang, I ended up running straight to my crush's locker. Well, I didn't run, I more like sprinted, but you know what? Like, we're just gonna act like it was normal. And when I finally walked up to her, I said, hey, like, you ready to go back to yours? Huh? Oh yeah, just give me real quick. Let me just powder my nose. I remember she ended up putting makeup on her face, and me and her, we ended up walking together outside of the school, and everyone was staring at us. I am not joking. Everyone was definitely staring, thinking, bro, what is Bubba doing with that girl? But honestly, I didn't care. Me and her, we ended up going in her mom's car, and her mom was a really nice, sweet lady. But one of the things she ended up saying was, honey, did you end up cleaning the basement? What, mom? Yeah, obviously I cleaned it. 100% she didn't clean it because the way her voice started shaking made me realize that she was definitely lying to her mom. But hey, a little mess never hurt anybody. At least so I thought. Because when we finally got to her place, I remember I ended up seeing her bedroom that she would always post photos in online about, and she had a really nice clean bedroom. But right as I was about to walk into it, she says, oh, don't go in there. That's my older sister's room. We're not allowed to go in in there. Wait, what? That's your older sister's room. I've seen you post photos online, and I thought this was your room. What? No, that's just my older sister's room, and she just has good lighting. At that moment, I started to kind of be weirded out, and I looked at her and said, wait, so where's your room? At that moment, she ends up grabbing my hand, and me and her, we end up going downstairs to a basement. And I am not joking. When she opened that basement door, I got a good whiff of something that was a disgusting smell. Like, think of the most gross smell ever. Think of like sweaty fish, tar, like anything disgusting. That's basically what the whiff I got was. And the more I went down the steps towards the basement, I was getting more grossed out by the second. I had really no idea what was going on, but when I finally went downstairs, I started to realize what the smell was, and I instantly regretted going downstairs because I realized she had a really nice big basement spot for herself, but there was food packaging everywhere. There was left plates. There was moldy milk sitting in the corner of the room. And not only that, but I swear there was mold growing from her ceiling. Like, this definitely wasn't a girly room that no one would expect. That it was the most disgusting thing ever, to the point where I looked at her and said, wait, so this is your room? Yeah, it's a little messy, but just don't worry about it. I'm just gonna, like, you know, get ready to, like, just relax at home. Give me a second. And I remember this girl ends up going to her closet, and she just opens it straight up and starts getting changed right in front of me. And I am not joking. When she was changing, I ended up staring at her and seeing her cherries, and I'm like, damn, like, she's hot. But then out of nowhere, when she went to the bathroom and got makeup remover and took off the makeup she had, I saw her for a totally different person. Like, I am not joking. It's crazy how much makeup can change a girl in the way she looks, because this girl looked nothing like she did back at school. Like, she literally was a huge catfish IRL. And I was in major shock to the point where I looked at her and said, do you want to work on the project? I remember she ended up finally laying on the couch, and she ended up releasing a massive sigh, as if she just took off like 30 pounds of weight on her, which I don't know how much that makeup weighed, but it definitely weighed a lot from what I'm seeing. And then I remember she ended up saying, okay, yeah, let's just do this project, dummy. Come here. And me and her, we ended up sitting down, work on the project. And I've decided that at that point, I wasn't interested in this girl anymore, because she just did not look like the girl of my dreams that I was expecting. So me trying to get the project done as fast as possible, I remember I'm just writing down everything we need to do. And basically she starts building the structure that needs to be the atom for the project that we had. And then I remember I finally ended up looking at her, and she looks at me, and I guess we had a moment where we ended up staring at each other's eyes. But in reality, I was actually staring at the pimple that was in between her eyebrows, but that's not the point. Going on, I remember when she saw I was staring at her eyes and she was staring at mine, she ended up basically leaning in and she tried to kiss me. But instead of kissing her, I ended up kind of leaning back and going, oh, sorry, I'm kind of nervous. Oh no, it's okay. You don't have to be nervous. And at that moment, she ends up basically jumping on top of me, and me being so grossed out of how this girl looked, I ended up closing my eyes, and me and her, we ended up doing the Juice Tango. I know it's not the most ideal to do it that way, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I really had no idea what else to do. Me and her, we start basically doing the Devil's Tango. And while one thing led to another, out of nowhere, I ended up hearing her mom come downstairs, and she says, honey, what's going on down there? Like, it still smells terrible. Seriously? Get that boy out of the house. We need to get this place cleaned up. At that moment, I couldn't agree more. And I ended up pushing her off me and said, we could just finish it the rest back at school. I'll see you tomorrow. And when I left, I promised myself that I would never go back into that basement. The next day at school, I remember I ended up meeting up with the boys, and they all kept asking me how I did and what happened. And I did say that I did do the Devil's Tango with her, but I majorly regretted it. All the boys were questioning why, but I didn't give them an answer because obviously I didn't want to really invade this girl's privacy and just be a total jerk. And when I went inside my biology class, I ended up seeing her, and when I looked at her, I couldn't look at her the same. To everyone else's eyes, she was all caked up, beautiful, and the finest girl on earth. But in my eyes, well, she was that same girl in the basement. I remember my crush ends up walking up to the door to open the cabin, but for some reason, the cabin door wouldn't open. We ended up looking at each other, and she looks at me and says, Bubba, I think we're stuck in here. Wait, what? Why? And that's when I walked up to the door as well, and I saw that the door would not budge. I started to worry because there was no way I was stuck in a cabin with my crush. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. Now, this story all takes place back in my grade 11 year. Now, in grade 11, I was a pretty simple guy, but at the same time, I was a major player, meaning that I would do simple things like play video games, go for long drives since I just got my license that year, and as well as, I guess, do homework. Not really, to be honest. I never really cared about school growing up, which probably led me to becoming a creator online that tells weird stories like this, but going on with the story. I remember basically, I was walking walking through the hallway my grade 11 year, and I ended up seeing one of my friends. Now, this friend that I had back in my grade 11 year, he was really rich. Like, rich to the point where it's actually kind of disgusting. I remember when I first got my license, I ended up getting my first car, which was a Toyota Celica GT, and I love that car to death. Like, I have no hate towards the car. I love it. As a first car, it did what it was supposed to do. But as for my friend, he ended up getting like a $100,000 car. I think it was like a Hellcat is what he called it, and it was the most insane vehicle ever. Literally, every girl in school would know when he pulled up because his car was so loud that even the teachers complained to the parents of my friend. But at the same time, he didn't care, nor did his parents. Going on with the story, I remember I ended up walking up to him and he looked at me and said, "Yo, Bubba, you know spring break's coming up, right?" Yeah. What about it? Well, like, do you have any plans? No, not that I know of. Why? Okay, bro, listen, right? Me and my parents, we bought a cabin recently, and it's actually not that far from here. It's deep in the woods up the hills, but it's really nice, and no joke, I was thinking me, you, and we bring a couple of baddies with us, and we go up to the cabin. You down? I remember I looked at him, and I'm like, bro, what girls would want to go with us up to a cabin? What do you mean, what girls, bro? It's that easy. Just say what girls you want. At that moment, I ended up looking around, and I ended up seeing my high school crush that I liked walking down the hallway. And me and her, we ended up having like a little eye contact, and that's when my friend looked at me and noticed that we were having eye contact, and he said, "Bro, I'll invite her if you want." What? No, don't invite her. It's not a good idea. What? Why not, bro? It's clear you like her, so like, if you're not gonna talk to her, like, you might as well just invite her out, and maybe you can, like, you know, meet her at the cabin. You know what I'm saying? Cabin lovin'. Do you know what you're even saying right now? Is what I told him. But he ended up shrugging his shoulders and ended up running up to my high school crush. At that moment, he ended up inviting her to like the cabin that's happening on spring break, and I ended up walking up behind him, and she looked at me and said, "Oh, Bubba, are you going to this cabin thing he's talking about?" And I looked at my friend because I didn't even give him an answer yet, but I ended up noticing that she wanted to go as well, and I just ended up saying, yeah, I'm going. You're not gonna come, or are you going as well?" "Oh, well, I mean, if you're going, sure, like, I'll be there." At that moment, my friend just looks at me and smiles as if, like, you know, he just accomplished a mission or something. But honestly, in my mind, I was just really awkwarded out, nor did I know what to say. But once we got her approval of her going to the cabin, she ended up walking away, and my friend looks at me, and I look at him as well, and I say to him, "Yo, so if she's going, who are you gonna bring?" I don't know yet. I'm just gonna send a snap out to like 12 different girls and see which ones want to go." At that moment, he ended up sending like all like 12 different girls on his Snapchat a message. I guess it was like his roster back in high school because he was also a major player like me. And he ends up basically like messaging these girls, and he just said, "I guess we'll just wait for the day when, you know, it happens." At that moment, I was like, okay, whatever. And let's just say when spring break finally came around, things got really wild. Because I remember leading up to spring break, he would always DM me a different girl that was coming down. And I was like really confused because it got to the point where like 5 different girls were like ready to go with him. And when it finally came to the night before, I ended up packing my stuff and crashing at his place with my car. When I went over to his place, I remember we ended up loading the vehicles up for the next day. And I looked at him and said, "Yo, so do you know what girls you're bringing?" "Yeah, to be honest, I'm just gonna bring 2 because like, I don't know which one I like more. And since there's 3 rooms in the cabin, like one girl can sleep by herself if she wants, or like I'll just take turns with them. I don't really care." Okay, cool, I guess, is what I told him. And to be fair, it was his cabin, nor was I gonna say anything. But then afterwards, he told me, "Oh, also, Bubba, I'm gonna pick up the 2 girls I'm gonna bring, but can you go pick up the chick that you like?" "What? You want me to pick her up from her house?" "Yeah, she sent me her address. Here, I'll send it to you." He ended up sending me her address, and I was really nervous because I didn't know if she was, to be honest, going to the cabin for me or for my really rich friend. But the next day when we got up, we ended up getting ready, and we ended up basically driving to go pick up the girls. The 2 girls that he invited actually ended up coming over to his place, since I guess they were both his sneaky links, and I guess they met for the first time together at his house, which is really weird. But me, I ended up driving to go pick up this girl, and when I saw her already standing outside with a suitcase, and I drove up to her and said, "Hey, like, you ready for the cabin?" "Oh, hey, Bubba, I didn't know you were picking me up." Yeah, is that okay?" "What? Yeah, of course it's okay. Here, let me put my things in the trunk." She ends up packing her things inside, and well, one thing led to another. She got in my car, and we started heading over to the cabin. We started driving down, and every once in a while, my friend would call me to make sure I'm going the right way, because this cabin was like really high up in the woods. Like, since I'm Canadian, I guess like there's like a ton of mountains, and this like cabin was like up there. So I remember I ended up taking my car and driving it up the hills, and it was really cool because this girl was like, you know, enjoying the like weather and stuff, and she loves the forest apparently, which to be fair, the only time I use a forest is when I wanted to go do the Devil's Tango. I'm not really much of a hiker, to be honest, but I remember me and her, we finally ended up making it to the cabin, and when we got there, I ended up seeing the 2 girls unloading their stuff from my friend's car that he brought, and me and this girl, we ended up getting out of our car, and we ended up unloading things as well. We got inside the cabin, we started picking our rooms, and this cabin was actually really nice. Like, in the daytime, it was beautiful. There was like nice furniture, you know, the wood walls, like it was fantastic. But I think the most awkward part about this though was that when it finally came to us like going inside the cabin with our suitcases, I remember my friend walked up in front of all of us and says, okay, so there's 3 bedrooms. I forgot to mention. So like, I was wondering if you guys want to group up in some way. And it was so funny because the 2 girls he brought looked at each other and looked at him and said, oh, like, aren't I sharing a room with you? I mean, I don't mind, whichever way works. And they ended up all putting their luggage in the same room. As for me and this girl, I looked at her and I'm like, well, I mean, there's 2 rooms left. Do you want your own room? Like, it's totally up to you. And she looks around and says, yeah, I mean, I'll have my own room if you want me to. Oh, no, I mean, like, it's totally up to you. Like, we can share a room if you're down. Like, I would prefer that if you want me to be honest. And that's when she smiles. She ends up smiling and saying, you know what? Sure. That sounds like a plan. I remember me and her, we ended up putting our suitcases in the same room and we had 1 spare room with absolutely nothing in it, except the bed and the closet. But still, it was totally empty and no one was staying in there. I guess we would call that like the anger room. If someone gets angry at each other, then, you know, they could just go into the spare room. But anyways, going on with the story. After all the rooms and everything was sorted out, we ended up all heading into the living room. We started playing games together. We started like, you know, plugging in the Wii because for some reason someone brought a Wii system thinking it was a good idea, which to be fair actually was because we ended up playing Mario Party for like 4 hours. And as it started to get late at night, I remember my friend ends up going to his car and pulling out a ton of booze. Now, quick warning before anything, okay? I have to put this warning out there because I don't want to get this video demonetized, but basically the warning is do not underage drink. It is not cool. It does not make you a cooler person. It is bad for your system and no one should do it. High school is when you're supposed to experiment. I get that, but underage drinking is really gross and really disgusting. But since he brought booze, we all ended up having a good time and we ended up drinking together. And well, that led to some craziness because I remember after we all drank, we started to get really hungry. And for some reason, my friend thought it was a good idea to bring booze, but not bring food. So I remember one girl even tried to like Uber Eats food to the place, but we were far away cabin. Like there was no way there were any restaurants nearby to bring us food. And then that's when one of the girls said, oh, well, to be honest, I didn't drink at all. And I mean, I could just drive one of your guys' cars and we can go like quickly to the store and pick up something. I remember my friend, he ends up like pulling out his keys out of his pocket and he ends up throwing it at the girl from how like much he drank. And he's like, I'll come with you since it's my car, but like, let's go like together. What? Dude, we're not all gonna fit in your car, is what I told him. And that's when he's like, oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you 2 lovebirds stay here, and me and these 2 baddies right here, we're gonna go. I remember one of the girls got super upset when he said that, to the point where they actually all ended up leaving together, but the last girl, for some reason, that left the door, ended up slamming it super hard to close it. At that moment, I remember my crush looks at me, and she's like, okay, well, he's a bit of a jerk. What, him? How is he a jerk? Well, like, I don't know, that's a bit overkill, don't you think? I mean, yeah, but like, you gotta understand, he's been like, you know, drinking and like, you know, it's just one of those nights. Oh, okay, well, you seem calm. Yeah, like, I'm good. Do you go out to cabins much? To be honest, it's my first time, I guess you could say, other than like camp. Oh, well, do you want to like maybe like walk around, like go check out like what's around here? You mean you want to go walk into the woods? Yeah, like, why not? Okay. I remember me and this girl, we ended up basically walking up to the front door and we tried opening it. But then I remember my crush, she ends up pulling the handle down, but realizing that the handle would not move. And that's when my crush looks at me and says, Bubba, the store isn't moving. What? What do you mean? And that's when I walked up to the handle as well, and I realized that the door would not open. And this was like the main entrance. There was no other doors around the cabin other than this main entrance door. And all the windows were like alarm systemed, and we didn't want to like mess with anything. So I remember I ended up looking at this girl and I'm like, I think we're stuck in here. Wait, what? How are we stuck? That makes no sense. I remember she starts kind of panicking and I start to as well, because, well, to be fair, like, we're stuck in a cabin. And one thing led to another. I remember she looks at me and she starts to worry because we ended up getting an Amber Alert on our phones right at that moment. It started to freak us out, and obviously, like, you know, it made me a little shook that, you know, it started to rain, we got an Amber Alert, and then like on top of that, we were stuck in a cabin. We thought things could not get worse, but sadly it did, because I remember me and this girl, we ended up just going up to my room, or I guess our room I should say, and we ended up sitting on the bed and we're starting to think like, what should we do? Should we call my friend? But there's no service. And then that's when the worst thing happened, where I remember all of a sudden we ended up hearing like a large like thunderstruck, and then the lights went out. It just went dark for some reason. Like there was no lights at all that would turn on. And that's when I looked at her and said, I think the power went out. Wait, what? Are you serious? Oh my goodness, things just can't get worse. I hate thunderstorms. Oh, well, don't worry, I'm sure it'll pass. Bubba, can you come cuddle me? Yeah, sure. I remember me and her, we ended up cuddling in the bed that we were supposed to sleep in. And well, from cuddling, it led to one thing and another. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys. We ended up doing the devil's tango in a cabin that we were
stuck in with the power out. I mean, to be fair, like, it seemed like the perfect moment to me. I don't really know, to be honest. Comment down below what you guys think. But honestly, things did end up still getting worse. And you guys are probably wondering how. Well, let's just say like an hour went by, and I remember we ended up hearing someone downstairs open the front door. But honestly, me and her were so distracted with each other that we didn't realize one of the girls ended up walking into our room when we're in the middle of doing the devil's tango. And she walks in there complaining, saying, OMG, like, I'm so done with him. Like, he's such a jerk. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see what was going on here. And she ends up leaving right away. At that moment, me and this girl that was my crush looked at each other and we kind of just giggled and laughed. Honestly, we thought things were just as bad as they seem, and what's the point of complaining? Honestly, would you guys get stuck in a cabin with your crush? Because if you guys would, then fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.